Hello, hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Welcome to the Bomb House podcast. This will be part one of a two-part series featuring our guest. And man, these episodes came out great. If you're a musician, an artist, or just a fan of music, this is going to be a very valuable resource for all of y'all. And this is gonna be a longer intro than normal because it's pretty important. You're gonna see a theme early on in this episode, but I'm just gonna give a quick story here. Some very good friends of mine that were in a band called Solis were in town this past weekend playing a festival downtown Morganton, and this band, they're fantastic, by the way. You need to check them out. But they were in town, and I wanted to make sure, I have a lot of good friends in this band, and I wanted to make sure they were taken care of while they were here. And so I was with them for a little bit, and then I listened to a sound check and just made sure everything was okay. And then I did not plan to stay for the show. In fact, I told Leo, sort of the guy, he's the main guy behind the band. I said, Leo, I'm probably just gonna hang out a couple of songs and take off. Right? I had every intention of just leaving, and they got started with their set, and man, I was so blown away by what I was watching and listening to. I just became a fan right there instantly, and I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to leave. I'm going to watch their whole set. And it was so good. It was so inspiring to watch my friends just create some really cool moments. And I was just a fan. I wasn't a critic. I wasn't thinking like a producer. I didn't want to be critical. I just wanted to enjoy it. And man, I just became a fan of this band, Solis. And so the theme for this podcast and for this particular episode really is about, at the end of the day, we all got into music because we were fans. We're fans of all the bands we talk about and all the musicians we talk about. We're just fans. And this is a good story. This is a great story of a fan of music that goes on to help discover arguably one of the biggest bands in the 90s and ever. Great story, and again, a great resource if you're in this business, want to get into the business, and you want to learn some tips and tricks. God bless. I hope you all have a great week. Check it out. Well, welcome back.
Well, here we are.
Well, usually I say, hey, what's up? Welcome to the bomb.
Well, I guess we're doing this again.
We're doing well. Wait, where's the bombs? Okay. All right, we're going to get straight to our guest.
Let's do it.
We, early on, when I started, when we started talking about this, about the podcast, this particular guest was one of my first people I thought of.
Yes.
And there are a few reasons why. Number one, I think he's going to prove to be a very valuable source of information.
Right.
And for artists, musicians in the biz, wanting to be in the biz. And the dude's awesome. Last year, I called him about
I'm in the wrong building. Sorry.
I called this particular guest last year. I was like, I texted him because, I'm like,
because
hey,
2018, right?
Yeah. And I was like, hey, I want to go see the Dolphins. He's like, dude, I'm in London. I'm like, what are you doing in London? He's like, I'm with the Rolling Stones. I was like, you just with the Rolling Stones for like a show? He's like, no, like the entire tour.
Wow.
I was like, okay. So
our street cred just went up a little bit.
So Chip, introduce yourself. What's your name?
I am the guy that that hides in the corner and tries to stay out of jail. But
no, you're more than that.
Oh.
I am Chip.
Yeah, Chip.
And I've known you for a long time.
Yeah, this is Chip Latham.
Yeah,
Chip, we met. I think we met through 1177 originally.
Absolutely.
And it was a unique. That was we don't need to get into the past of that. That could be a whole episode by itself. But we met there, and ever since we've just kept up, man. And this is going to be a fun podcast. This is going to be a long episode because I think we're going to have a lot of opportunities to help people, but before we get rolling with that, I think it's important to discuss, your industry experience, because you have a lot.
I'm old, yes, very old.
You have a lot.
That's a polite way of saying that.
I don't think that's what we meant to say.
I wasn't saying that, but
that's what my head here.
But you have a pretty killer history in the mainstream world.
I look good on paper.
And I would agree.
Right on.
And so take us back. Like, how did you get started in the mainstream music world? Because we're going to separate the mainstream world and the Christian world, because eventually you moved on a little bit. You dabbled in that as well.
Yep, absolutely. For me, it started with Casey Kasem, American Top 40. I had hippie babysitters. My parents liked to go out a lot, so...
In what area? Where were you from? You from Charlotte area originally?
Rock Hill, just South Charlotte, basically across the border. And this was the late 60s, early 70s. They loved music. I got turned on to the Jackson 5. They were my first love.
That's a pretty
That's
a pretty killer band.
Yeah, it is.
First poster on my wall was the Jackson 5. And in 5th grade, I used to wear leather ponchos and suede vests.
That's awesome.
Everybody thought I was a nut. If I did that today, they would think I was going to be shooting up a school, for real.
Really?
Wow.
But that was me. I loved dressing that way and used to sing in front of the mirror. Took guitar lessons at about age 7, but my hands weren't strong enough to make a chord, so my teacher sent me home with a tennis ball and said, squeeze this and come back when you're stronger. I did try that about 7 or 8 years later and learned 3 more chords, and then that is where that is. So
you can play. That's a lot of songs you can play with just 3 chords.
is.
Yeah, if I had the ear, but see, I don't have the ear. I can't tune a guitar. I can't figure out the chords, and I see these YouTube lessons, and I think, oh, this is easy, but it's work, and
Yes,
there's
work.
a learning curve, and there's only so many learning curves that you can take, and in the music business, it's constantly evolving with technology.
That is correct.
So there is always a learning curve, and they're just...
And you decided guitar was not worth
It was not
it's not
for
worth that learning
me.
curve.
Yeah.
In my second set of lessons, we had a, what do you call it? Not a recital, but whatever it is when you play, all the students play. I played Show Me the Way by Peter Frampton, and I just did the solos, and I learned that.
I'm in my head. I can hear it right now.
It was great until I just unplugged my guitar.
Have you heard Peter Frampton's acoustic stuff?
Yeah.
That he's been doing
On that show, what is it called? Guitar Center, I think.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That dude is so good.
He's very talented, and I did a decent job on that song, but I just unplugged my guitar without turning the volume down on the amp or the guitar, and it went me, and I just flipped. I threw my guitar off my shoulder. I ran off the stage, and
It's like post-traumatic stress disorder. You're
wow.
like, oh my God.
I think I need to be behind it, which
Like
worked out well.
The business side of things.
But I really started trying to predict hits with Casey Kasem. I would listen every week, and
Oh yeah, because back in the day, he was it for radio, right?
well, he was it for radio. He's also it for the music industry. That's the first.
Well, he had a lot
person.
of control.
He talked about
Casey
managers.
Kasem.
Yeah, but he talked about the business. He talked about managers. He talked about producers. He talked about, the artist behind the song and
Was
what
he
happened.
was he one of the first to do that? Would he?
He
really?
was, as far as I know.
Wow, that's unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I remember predicting Love Will Keep Us Together by Captain Neil.
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember him saying, this song debuts at number 37. And I'm like, that's a number 1. And it was.
Oh wow.
And that has been what has kept me in the business, is my ears. Because if you're not finding new talent,
Yeah.
you're working for somebody else, basically.
So you ended up, but you ran into some pretty killer talent pretty early on, right?
I did. What happened was
a few biggies.
Yeah, I'll try not to name drop. I'll do it in reverse. But I was at a festival. I was a huge fan. And I really
Yeah, we just had dinner at Mountain Burrito, and we spent half of it talking about watching John Mayer live.
Oh yeah,
you're still a fan.
love
Yeah.
John Mayer.
Yeah.
And I think that is for a manager, and that's what I do. I'm an artist manager. that is probably the most important part. Is you got to be a fan. If you don't love it, if you don't love serving your artists and their fans, especially today, it's all about relationships. So I love the music, and I went to a festival and checked in a hotel right across the street from Tampa Bay Stadium, where the Bucks used to suck.
Oh yeah, and it was bad back then too.
Even worse than now.
I heard their complex had trailers for the offices of the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Yeah.
It was a
Well, we had a locker room. I say we. I jumped ahead. I met this guy in the elevator, and he was Rod Stewart's manager. And he I was complaining about the weather, and he's like, "There's a drought here. The farmers need this." And I'm like, "Screw the farmers. I'm going to an outdoor show."
and
he said,
"Who Rod Stewart?"
I was like, "I'm going to this festival." He's like, "I'm Rod Stewart's manager. You want to be my guest?" And I was like, "Sure. What's your angle?" And I really didn't really trust him, but he introduced me to his tour manager, and I became friends with him over the course of a year. And then the tour manager, whose name was Henry Newman, he passed away a few years ago, but at the end of a year, he asked me if I was interested in helping him in the business. And they had a band, an R&B band in Spartanburg, and they asked me to oversee them. And I spent about a month, and I said, "You guys are crazy. You're wasting your time." And he said, "Well, if you ever find a band, we're looking for artists." And so I started going to clubs, and even tried to put together my own band. I tried to do kind of like a Black Crowes throwback, because Crowes had just come out.
Yeah, they were hot.
The London Choir Boys were in England doing the same kind of thing.
Brendan O'Brien played guitar on that record and engineered that Black Crowes record.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Let's get nerdy.
That worked. I had a great group of musicians until it came time to find a lead singer, and those auditions were terrible. I was running ads in Creative Loafing. I rented space, and I had 20.
So you were trying to find a band to put together for the management agency.
I had a guitar player that was a friend who was already writing, so I was just really kind of trying to help him put together. And I was like, "Look, if this works, I've got connections." And so it did not work because all the singers were terrible. I couldn't believe the people that would come in and say, "I am a singer," and then step up to the microphone. I'm like,
you'd be like, "Man,
I wouldn't even call yourself a drummer." No offense. Where's my rim shot?
No drummers here. No drummers here.
Where's my rim shot? So anyway, I started going to bars. I figured that's the easy way, and I found this band playing in a club called Hootie and the Blowfish. And
wow,
when I found them, I took them to my partner. And at the time, my partner was working for a large company, Rod's Management, and they had signed Prince, and he was Prince's day-to-day guy. And so
can you imagine being Prince's day-to-day? I can't imagine what it would be like to be his day-to-day dude.
No way.
He would seem high maintenance.
I never got to meet him. He took off to Europe for the Nude Tour. This was 1990. And so I had this new band, and over the course of that time...
What was Hootie playing at the time? Were they doing covers, or were they doing
No, they were
doing originals?
I mean, they would do like a Beatles melody and an REM song, but they were doing originals. I walked into the sound check to see them, and they were sitting on the stage, and Darius was playing Hold My Hand. And I was like, that's a hit.
Really?
That's a hit.
Just acoustic, just sitting there?
Yeah, and they, I talked to them afterwards and told them who I was working with. And then when I went to Henry, he basically said that Stiefel Phillips, the management company, decided they weren't going to sign any more artists. They were going to start their own record label with MCA, which they did. So Henry and I left, and Hootie became my first signing. And so they blew up. That caused a giant lawsuit. I got exposed to the music industry really quick.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that pond that spreads over into Nashville and the Christian side, some of those same sharks are there. They're just different types of sharks, but they still bite.
Yeah, the business on the Christian side is just as ruthless.
And we'll get into that, more later. But that kind of is what started everything. I used to shop Hootie to, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 different A&R guys, and it was the same 4 songs. It was Hold My Hand,
Huge.
Let Her Cry,
Huge.
Time,
Huge.
and Only Want to Be With You.
Man.
Huge. Tamburino.
There's the Dolphins in that one.
And more importantly, when
He's a huge Tamburino fan.
oh yeah,
Darius
is for sure. And when the album came out, those were the 4 singles. So
Gosh, and it wasn't just little
Chip.
Chip.
They took the
Chip,
world, dude.
It was instantaneous. It felt like, was it instantaneous?
Well, let me go back, because really the guy that some of the stuff that I did with them created momentum for sure. But the guy that really is the one that what I call broke the band is David Letterman.
Oh,
David Letterman was driving into work one day.
he had a reputation. He has a reputation for this. If he hears a band,
And he did. There were only like 5 stations playing Hold My Hand. It was a new single. It was actually the second single. The first one flopped.
what was the first one?
I think it was Hannah Jane.
Oh yeah,
There's not a lot of talk about it because it didn't do well, but
I really like that record.
there was a station in New York playing Hold My Hand, and this was like a Tuesday, and David heard it, and he went to his booker and said, "Get those guys on my show." And she was like, "We have an opening Friday." They jumped on a plane, and then
Wow.
it just
South
exploded from
Carolina
there.
dudes.
Just exploded from there, and there was a lot of drama, and things were moving so fast, and it ended up being ugly, not so much with me in the band, but with my business partner in the band, or my business partner and a friend of theirs. I won't get into that, but
Yeah. But there's drama.
Yeah, there was drama, and so I spent a little bit of time trying to find the next Hootie before I realized how stupid that was. And when I say a little bit of time, that's probably 3 years.
But you have a very good relationship with them.
Oh yeah,
to this day. Like
yeah.
you still do a lot of stuff with them.
I do. I'll come full circle to that, but it's at one point I had a friend who was working for the Carolina Panthers at the time in the television department, and he came up to me and he said, "Have you ever thought about managing a Christian band?" And I said, "Yeah, I have. I'm not interested." And he said,
Was there a reason why? Was it just the reputation of the business, or
there were only 2 songs that I had ever liked on Christian radio: "Jars of Clay," "The Flood,"
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was huge for them.
and "Audio Adrenaline," "Hands and Feet." And
I
I actually
love-
went and saw Audio Adrenaline.
I loved Audio A.
Only Christian concert I'd seen up to that point.
I'm
But
very partial to that.
yeah, we
I
both
just am.
are.
We just are.
We
yeah,
both
we have
are.
a close relationship to them.
And that really became neat later on. But I went and I met these guys. These guys were this band that he wanted me to help was a local Rock Hill band. I mean, they were just playing in their church. They were a Christian band, and so I took them on. And as soon as I took them on, they had a couple of demos they had recorded, and then they decided that they were going to go mainstream. And they became a completely different fish. They went to Metallica, and their sound got heavy and totally
What?
changed.
Wow.
And it ran their creative guitar player off, and they stayed together and
The
did
guitar player.
some pretty good stuff.
Gotta keep the guitar player, Jimmy.
But
Keep the guitar player.
You got to.
one of the things that I did, Hootie was the first band I knew to get a website. In 1994, when I found out they had Hootie.com, I thought, maybe I should get a website for my management company. So I started calling around, and it was $5,000, and somebody finally said, "Look, you can get this program called Microsoft Front Page and do it
And make
yourself." So I did, and I learned Front Page, and
So you built a website in 1994.
I did. Yeah, Alta Vista was the search engine, and I was up top, but unfortunately nobody was using it. So,
That is crazy.
but it led me to a guy named Corey Rudel, who is considered one of the early pioneers of internet marketing, and I bought his course, and he talked about the lifetime value of
Internet
customers
marketing in the 90s.
in 1995, and
I would have never thought of that.
giant books, that looked like they were stored in a library somewhere that took me forever to go through, but it was all about building relationships by building a mailing list. And it led into funnel systems, which are still being used today.
Yeah.
And that's very, very important for any artist to collect emails, to build your own data.
Number one, remember,
That's it.
collect email.
That's it. Every artist does it, but if you go to a successful artist, if you go to John Mayer, it'll be sign up for my newsletter.
Yeah,
be
I get
subtle.
emails. I get emails from
Yeah,
that.
everybody does it. It's not it's not pushed as hard as it needs to be by the majors, in my opinion, or in Nashville in the Christian sector. But I learned that very early on, and so I started learning how to design marketing pages, and I just have always gone to seminars and conferences.
So you've kept yourself educated.
You have to, yeah. And these days I watch a seminar or webinar pretty much every day. Some
awesome.
Some I pay for, some are free, and then I decide whether I want to spend money on them. But that led me into Nashville because as I was working with this Christian artist that decided to get out of it, somebody, for some unknown reason, went on Alta Vista search engine and typed in Christian Artist Manager. And I came up first, and it was a band out of Atlanta or outside of Atlanta called Exit East.
Yeah, I remember Exit East.
So they were my first signed band, and that got me into Nashville. And I loved Nashville. I've learned more from working with Nashville industry people than I did with all the mainstream labels, because it's broken down into, first of all, it's a small world with the exception
everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, I mean, all the labels are there except for Tooth and Nail, maybe one or two others, but for the most part, the whole industry's there. And it's a micro level. It's not on the same scale. You can go into a building and know a lot of the people there instead of walking into Sony in downtown New York.
It's a huge, Sony's building was huge.
Right.
I remember we got like the first version, the first Korn album years ago. We did a Irvin Plaza. Is that the name of the place in New York?
It's still there.
I was in a band that we did a showcase up there, and they took us into the Sony building. This was right when
Was it 7 Mile?
No, this was a band called Four Man Furnace.
Oh yeah, okay.
And we went up there. This is when I was in my early 20s, and man, we got like Korn. Like Korn wasn't even out yet. I thought
you said porn. Excuse me.
No, Korn.
In case you need to beat
Korn
that.
with a K.
Korn. Okay.
But we, at first I was like, what the crap was I listening to? And then, of course, they became huge. But that wasn't it. I just remember the office building being something from a movie. It was incredibly huge.
550 Madison Avenue or something like that.
It was
still there.
It was huge.
Entire floors got shut down, as Black Monday or Black Friday or whatever hit, where they just laid off so many people, and it was sad to watch that through Napster. But that was good for me because the Christian industry was a little bit different mindset. Illegal
Cheap.
Downloads hit the Christian industry too, but it's just a micro level, so it was easier to understand.
The budgets were significantly less, and it wasn't as bloated, and they ran things a lot tighter budget-wise.
Very much.
And it was cool because a lot of especially the indie Christian stuff from Seattle, in the 90s, late 90s, it was good. The production, I never felt like the production ever suffered. It was incredible talent. And, Audio A did a record with John Hampton, who had done, what was it? I forgot who John Hampton produced. I mean, he produced Small Town Poets, good friends of ours. He produced Hey Jealousy. Who was that? Hey, Jealousy.
Not Sister Hazel.
Gin Blossoms.
Gin Blossoms. He did. That was his.
Sorry for confusing Gin Blossoms and Sister Hazel.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
They were contemporaries.
But John Hampton was a great producer, and it was a big deal when Audio A used him to make that record, which is arguably one of my favorite records when I go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
But that was a big deal. But it was cool that he was making records in that world, and and then DC Talk became monsters.
And it's funny because DC Talk and Audio Adrenaline are people that I talk about a lot when I run into people in the Christian community that talk down on contemporary Christian music.
Right.
Because I say, well, then you must not be a fan of Billy Graham, because Billy Graham, he was kind of like the way Letterman was to Hootie to the Christian industry.
Yes, he invited a lot of artists.
And all of a sudden, if you've ever heard Will tell the story, all of a sudden they were playing in front of 50, 60,000 people on those crusades. And, Billy Graham was an early supporter, from DC Talk to Audio Adrenaline to Mercy Me, during some of the later years. And I use that. People shut up real quick when you say that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't really refute Billy.
I think the stigma that exists, exists because of Christian radio. Yeah. It's just so sanitized and so vanilla, and how things get things get mixed a certain way for Christian radio, and only certain songs with certain vocalists get put on the radio, and it choked the industry. It literally killed people. I mean, not killed people, but
it literally,
killed their careers.
Literally
killed their
murdered
careers.
human beings.
Yeah, it killed their careers. It really did.
Even some bands that did really well. I won't throw any names out there, but I know a few that were, selling great, and then got steered into a direction, and then their next conversation was, this record didn't do too well. If this next one doesn't sell, huge bands that were headlining tours. So that's the
interesting
thing.
how that works. Huge band, they do a record a certain way with a producer probably picked out by the label, and then all of a sudden it doesn't do great, and they're like, oh well, guess what?
Well, that song's too long. Let's edit this down to where you have a bar, the intro, and then let's just do.
It's funny how that works. It's funny how that works.
We got to be at the chorus in 45 seconds.
Yeah.
And things just get edited down, and it gets overanalyzed.
Oh boy.
There's some people that put their foot down and don't let that happen, and there's some people that let it happen and it works for them.
But I think with the Christian industry, though, you had some good success. I would say, 11U7 had some early on. The singles they were breaking records for Sony.
Yeah,
right?
number one. That was my first number one rock radio single. Was More Than a Revolution.
It went. It was like I got a call. I think Matt called me. He's like, "Hey man, we're going to be number one." I had chill bumps, and that's when Christian rock radio charts actually meant something.
Yeah.
Because nowadays, I'm sorry, no offense to anybody that is charting on Christian rock radio, but it doesn't count when there's like 8 stations.
Right.
Nowadays it's a shadow of itself, but back then
it is.
You were fighting with biggies. You were fighting with Jeremy Camp, you were fighting with Mercy Me, you were fighting with Audio Adrenaline.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Because there were only really 3 formats, AC, CHR, and rock, and so most artists would put stuff out on all of them.
And it really connected. Those singles I remember Will telling me from Audio A that it broke. They loved it.
Yeah.
It was neat. It was exciting.
Let me tell one story about those guys, because I love them to pieces. I really loved traveling and going to concerts before I got into the business, and then I got in a van on my first radio tour, and that wasn't so much fun. And then I got in a van with 3 teenagers with 11-7. And that was an experience.
And they were kids.
They were kids. Oh my goodness, it was such an adventure.
I met them before they were even 16.
I was even old then.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were, and this is, they were young. They were learning the ropes. They had instant talent.
They were so good at working an audience, and
one of the best. I've never seen kids attack. They just attached to them so quickly at a show.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
So I used to have, I've always had video cameras. I've always been fascinated with video. Photos are great, video is better. And I had my first camera, you had to plug it into a wall. It had a beta tape in it. So I've always had cameras. I think
beta. You don't know beta because VHS won.
That's right. They did win. And that camera, I think, died a slow death. But I think when 11-7 came was kind of towards the end of analog, and I had a small camcorder, and Matt got it. He's like, bring it everywhere. Film everything. He got mad because they did something in Walmart. They put on costumes, and I didn't catch it. So he was like,
yeah.
But
because back then MySpace was the hot thing.
It was.
Right? MySpace was the hot thing.
And video content was huge. We did a video with them in the Walmart parking lot where they put Caleb in a shopping cart.
Caleb was the bass player.
He was the bass player.
Little redhead dude.
And Jonathan took off running, pushing him, and Matt was going to jump out and scare him. But Jonathan let go, and Jonathan didn't realize that it was a downhill slope.
I can see Jonathan.
And
no offense, Jonathan, if you're listening.
I got it all on video. The thing goes, and Caleb looks, and there's a tree and a curb, and he's got 2 options: fly through the air or jump before he hits the curb. And he jumped. And I got it all. I did it in slow motion and looped it. We used to do these really cool contests. One of the things that I did that kind of led to where I am now in a very backwards way was I invented an app for video promotion. So the band had a single called MySpace.
Yeah.
We ran contests. I had this app to where every time you clicked on a link, a member link, you would get a point, and it would create a chart like Billboard. And so each member would get their own link, and they would post it on MySpace. And so we ran contests to get into the top 10.
And that's great. That's a great idea.
MySpace has got, I think, 750,000 views. And that's only part of it, but I've always been kind of
Back
obsessed.
in the day.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I still have a version of that now called the Social Promoter, but those were good times. And then the Advice came along, and I actually
A great band.
found them on
Fantastic.
MySpace.
Fantastic.
I decided that
Those dudes. Best
they were
musicians.
so talented. I heard them by doing a search on MySpace for bands within a 2-hour drive.
Yeah.
And they popped up, and I contacted them, and they'd set up a private audition at a club called The Channel in Greenville.
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember The Channel.
Yeah.
And they opened it up, and it was just me, and they were amazing. And I rode the storm out with them, I think, for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, you really
until
helped
they
them.
formally broke up.
Yeah, you really helped them. But, the industry changed.
It did.
In that
Yeah.
time period. And this would be a good time to talk about that. Like, what happened? We're going to say Napster a lot, but that started it. But, what happened? How did the culture change? And then we're going to get to what you're working on now.
Okay. Well, it seemed to happen kind of slow. You had people come in and, like we talked about a little earlier, making decisions on behalf of the band. And then some of those people got a little more power and started buying bands. For the Advice,
Like buying, we're talking like a good example.
buying the name, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to call it out, but there's certain artists that are on tour, right? And it's not even the original members. What happens is a manager will purchase basically the IP. They purchase the band itself, and they just plug in basically salaried guys to be that band.
Yeah.
It would be like, I'm just making this up, but Elvis, they get an Elvis impersonator in there,
And he becomes the real Elvis.
Yeah.
It's like the Temptations. The Temptations, I love old school soul, and the Advice definitely had some Temptations in them.
Yeah, they did.
There's no original members, but they're still touring. They're just singing the songs and the brand, and brands are strong, and the Christian
and that's what's happened.
and the Christian industry picked up on that and started working more on brands than bands,
Yeah.
or artists, whatever you want to call them, and.
And this is big business, and it was big money. It is big money.
Can I ask why do you think that works?
Brands sell.
I think
Yeah.
it's like me being a blind, loyal Dolphins fan, regardless of how bad their seasons have always consistently
So
been.
it's Team Dolphins, it's Team Temptations.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And in this case, it could be team whatever band.
I got
Yep.
you. I got you.
And especially with somebody like a couple of the first bands to do this, which I almost said accidentally, they had a huge following from years
Mega.
of being their real band. So there was a brand that was built, and for somebody that's been around, that's tired of touring, it's kind of it can be an exit strategy. For me with the Advice, they were signed to a label by the general manager after we did our own single and it hit Billboard. We
I
did
forgot what label.
In Pop.
In pop.
We did a song called Your Love Sets Me Free, and it charted on Billboard. We did our own video for it. We did our own radio tour. We
Yeah,
actually
that's
did it,
that's the most important thing. You had to prove to them
and that's what it took.
that they had this kind of power.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the label said, "Hey, we're going to do this for you." You had to go out and do it and
Yeah.
prove it to them.
Every label in Nashville, every label major, every label independent with major distribution, they all turned them down. So there were no other options. And when it charted, I got a phone call from the GM, and he wanted to meet. And when we were in his office, he pulled up certain playlists, and he pulled up one of the fish stations in Cleveland. He's like, "Y'all are getting more airplay than all of our artists combined." I'm like, "Yeah, well, it's a great song. I'm trying to tell you." And
That's what you. But that's why
Trying
you
to
need a
tell you.
manager.
Yeah.
That's why you need a guy.
Yeah.
unfortunately for the band, the general manager decided to leave the company about 4 months before their debut album came out.
Yeah.
And so
And
the
it
whole
sunk it. It
the
hurt 'em.
whole label eventually resigned. At one point, there was a guy in England running the label, just as a administrative person.
I can't even. I don't even.
It was a mess, and that kind of really. That's when I kind of said, I think I'm kind of tired of breaking new bands, and I had been approached by my friend from Hootie and the Blowfish, Jim Sonnefeld, who Hootie fans will know as Sony.
Yeah, he does Christian music.
He called me and he said, well, first of all, I saw him on the last Hootie tour, and he kind of broke down and said, man, I'm a raging alcoholic. I've been in recovery. And he said a couple of things that kind of made me think that he was searching. So the Advice was on a tour with Mercy Me and Disciple and Jars of Clay. Yeah, they were playing the Colonial Center.
That's a tour.
Talking about some polar opposites.
They were playing the Colonial
That's the way it
Center
was,
in Columbia, and I called Sony and I invited him. And I said, come out to a Christian show? And he was not in town. But about a year later, he called me and he said, hey, I appreciate your invite. I got these songs that I've recorded. Do you think the Advice might be interested in recording them? So I kind of played a couple for the Advice, and they write their own stuff. And there were some good songs that could have worked, but they just weren't interested. And over the course of about a month, the conversations kept going more and more towards him releasing them. And he finally just said, I want you to manage me. I want to do this myself. And so he's had actually four Christian projects. He does not tour. That's why Hootie has stopped touring, because he sobered up and got his life together. And he does a little bit of traveling to speak for free at Celebrate Recovery events.
Really?
Yeah.
Rad.
Man, that's awesome.
I didn't know that. Ministry.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and Hootie does 4 charity shows a year, and those are always a lot of fun.
And you're involved with those charity shows, right?
I am, but I mean, there's no. When I first started working with Sony, Doc McGee was managing Hootie.
All right, Doc McGee. Let's explain who Doc is. I think we have in the past, but Doc managed Bon Jovi,
Kiss, Ted Nugent.
He's a legend.
Motley Crue.
Yeah, he's a legend.
A few guys.
Yeah, he's the guy that actually put together that famous tour in Russia or somewhere where the plane got just trashed with the party on board.
I remember that story.
Legendary.
I remember that.
It's like
story.
Monsters of Rock or one of those big things. But
they used to do huge shows in Russia. It was a big deal.
It was really fun because I would see him. We'd talk. He was like totally cool. Do your thing with Sony. And then he left, and so there hadn't really been anybody involved. But they've got a great organization that they've always had. That's an office. It's fully staffed. They've always had health insurance and dental plans that they set up at the very beginning.
That's awesome.
And they run everything out of that office. Darius's stuff is run out of that office.
His country stuff, all the same. It's all handled.
All under one roof.
Because he's had an excellent career in the country world.
Unbelievable.
And from what I understand, originally they didn't want to play ball, right? Like there was some
he had to re-record his whole first record.
What?
Yeah. I mean, really what happened with him and his country thing is totally separate.
Yeah, it's a totally separate
I see him,
thing.
but I support him and I love him dearly. But his thought was, Sony went to the band and said, we're not going to tour anymore. I can't do it. I got to get out. So Darius had been wanting to do a country project. He thought he was going to record it in his basement. And Doc McGee said, no, let me talk to some people. He got the head of Capitol to sign him, over a dinner. And before the album even came out.
That's so funny.
He had
over a dinner.
I'm going to have dinner with the head of Capitol. Sign them.
Over the course of making the record, they came up with a song. And before they put the record out, they put a single out. And it hit the top 20.
Yeah, it blew up. I remember because everybody started, because back then, some certain people started crossing over into country music, because that genre at the time was still buying CDs. Mm-hmm. There were physical things still being sold.
Their fans are ravenous.
They still are, because they cash their check and they go to Walmart or Target and they buy a physical product.
Yeah, and it's the biggest part of the industry now.
It is for signed artists for sure. There's a different way.
It's a different business,
independence, but he just took advantage of it and he's blown up. And at that point, it became, I need to see this through. I can't just jump in. And so, there have been talks about Hootie getting back together. A lot of talks lately. I'll just leave it at that.
Man, can you imagine how big that's going to be?
I'm going to
because they are timeless. People still know.
Oh yeah.
those
Yeah.
songs. Like
Yeah.
it's awesome that they're from close to our area,
They
which is
are.
even cooler. But
Sonny still lives in Columbia. The other guys
and
live
here
in
I am,
Charleston.
like, and I was a rocker indie kid, like sorta. Like I'd always preferred indie rock music, and I even
You were a headbanger. We know that.
I was.
You were a headbanger.
I'm not ashamed of that. I love Striper, but
That's right.
still do. And but I love that record. To this day, I
Yeah.
love the second record.
Yeah.
I just thought, man, this
It was a formative one for.
it was
for
good,
me,
man. And
so.
because the thing that was cool about them was they could play. At that time, we had 99.7 here, which was the standard rock station.
Right.
AC/DC had that format, and you could play Hootie there.
99.7,
But
the
they
end.
played Hootie on alt rock.
They did, but they actually broke on rock radio, which
Yes.
was a surprise to me because
Yes.
I thought that
'Cause that's
they
when I
would
first
go
heard
after
them.
alternative
Yeah.
first.
Right.
But they broke on rock, and then they quickly
I
crossed
mean,
over
me
to
and my
pop.
wife, I think, were dating when that record came out, and we
So were
listened
me and
to
my
it.
wife. No, we were married by
We
then, I'm
loved
sorry.
it. Gosh, we loved it. We loved it. It's just, I still love it. But
Yeah.
and then Dan Marino, they did the video with Dan Marino. I was like, Mike, this is the best thing ever.
He still comes about
I know.
every other year or so to the Myrtle Beach Pro-Am. That's always fun because it's filled with a lot of 90s, rock stars and a ton of sports stars.
Yeah.
I've met Marcus Allen. I'm like a kid in the candy store. I'm like, who's
you
coming
go-
this year?
I will say,
Dan
if we go on
Marino?
your Facebook, if we go on your Facebook, I love the pictures you post because every other day it's either you and Ron Wood, you and Keith Richards, you and Ron Wood's kids.
I
It's-
wish I could say that was all self-promotion. Most of it is because I have to brand,
you're
but
really
a lot of it, I
close,
love it.
But you're really close to that organization.
Yes.
It's more than that.
Those guys are my family, and the Stones are my family, and so I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time posting about both.
And the
of
Rolling
them.
Stones have their own museum.
Yes, they have their own museum called Exhibitionism.
Think about that.
It is in Nashville. It was in New York, Las Vegas,
Crazy.
somewhere else. I don't know. It's been moving around.
But I love that. I think that's cool.
They're the only artist that's ever done that. They were the first band to do to take their own production. They were the first band in 1969 to take a full stage sound system and lighting. They were the first band to do a pay-per-view and buy it and then take a gamble and then roll the dice with that. I mean, they have just
What?
set so many trends. They are the world's largest touring band, and they're so much fun to hang out with because they pay for everything. And I get to ride in a car in their motorcade and have police sirens and get dropped off right at the door. I kind of milk my knees a little bit.
And you told me,
Yeah,
you told me that, I'm going to ask about guitars, but you said that they stopped accepting freebies.
You can't give them anything.
Yeah,
and
and
they
then
won't-
they're very incestuous. They give each other guitars all the time, and they can't keep up with what guitars they have.
they steal them.
They steal them from each other.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah. A few years ago, Keith took a Stratocaster from Ronnie, and it was like a 64, 59, something.
Those are the biggies.
So he took a old, 52 Martin acoustic from him and was going out and doing shows with it on TV.
I think that's pretty
It's a
fantastic.
different world, and for me in 2012, when I started managing Sony and getting connected back with Hootie through their charity work and stuff, I just decided that, I kind of started with Hootie. I'll just ride the storm out with Sony because I was ready to slow down. I was looking for something to do where I didn't have to travel, and I had been thinking about these promotion apps that I'd been doing, but I realized pretty quick that they were too technical, too complicated.
Well, okay. Well, this is going to be a great segue because you're doing something new, right? You're
I
on
am.
Facebook a lot. So explain what you're doing and, what it's called, all that good stuff for me.
Well, so basically, I thought that with technology the way that it is, that, in the past, you would manage maybe a couple of artists. I've always been a small operation. I've had maybe 2 employees at the most, and I've had a business partner. So it's always been small. I've always kept my roster to where I could be really hands-on. And I've always had a few clients that I would consult. And, it would be a monthly phone call, and they'd tell me what they were doing. I'd say, well, that's not a good idea. You need to do this or that. Or this song sounds great, but I wouldn't represent them. and it was cheap. You know, it was $100 a month, $200 a month, $50 an hour, whatever they felt like they needed. Well, with technology and in watching a lot of the marketing seminars, Facebook groups kind of became popular, and so did coaching videos. So
YouTube's blowing that up.
It is, but so is privately held content, you know, with password.
Yes.
Memberships,
Yes.
that's what they're called. So I came up with a combination of doing consulting to a group in a private Facebook group, which I haven't launched yet, and a training library for all of my consulting clients to go through, because I figured out after 30 years, I'm stupid like that these guys ask the same questions over and over and over.
Yeah.
You know, how many songs should I send a record label? No, not 10. You know, that's a very bad idea. You know, you want to keep that short, 2 or 3 songs. It has to be your very best song first. And you really should try to have the songs a little on the short end if you're going to pitch for labels, even if you have to do a second mix.
That's great, though, that because I know your Facebook page is blowing up.
Well, I'm doing a lot of
some
just
good
free
stuff.
stuff. Yeah, I'm just trying to create a warm audience, which is very important for bands to do.
Yeah.
But you know, how to do an elevator pitch. You know, networking is huge. Anybody can do that. Anybody can go, and I tell the people that are in my public group, are you playing this weekend? If not, where are you going? Because if you're not playing and you're sitting at home, why are you sitting on your butt?
That is so good.
Well, if I go
right.
meet you at a club and you're in a band and I introduce myself and I build a relationship with you and you know a manager or you know some label people, I've just tapped into your network.
Yeah.
And that's what I've done as a manager. I mean, the reason I get to ride around with these rock stars for fun is I've been networking my whole life. So I have a video on how to do an elevator pitch, how to package it so that when you see somebody, you know what to say in 30 seconds.
That's a cool idea.
Because you know, if you're at like South by Southwest and you run into an A&R guy after a panel, you're not going to have much time.
So I have a question. So let's just do like the top 2 things. Hypothetically, I've been working on a record, right? Or an artist has been working on a record. It's done, and they're starting. They're getting started.
Okay, brand new.
Yeah, we're talking like this is their first major thing. You know, this not funny business. What would your advice be for them to get the ball rolling? Just 2 simple things.
Well, first of all, video is king. And, you know, Facebook is a great platform. It's tied into Instagram.
And Facebook, by the way, for everybody, YouTube's become the big one, but Facebook is getting into YouTube's territory big time with video.
Yeah, it is.
And if you post a YouTube link on Facebook,
forget it. It's hot trash.
They will punish you.
Yeah,
They
don't
will,
do that.
They will reduce your score.
But Facebook video.
Facebook video, either live or just a video uploaded directly to Facebook.
Directly.
And what
They
kind
will
of video?
give it
Like,
weight.
could it be just them performing a song? Could it be?
Well, there's if you're starting out, you know, what I tell everybody is get your best song and get a video out of it. And it doesn't have to be a music video. It
A
can
lyric video?
No,
maybe?
I would do a single camera with an iPhone before I would do lyrics. Show people what you look
Really?
like.
Yeah.
I have seen people play in kitchens, in cars, in washing laundry rooms. Things that will, because you're going down a news feed, so you have to be able to get their attention so that they stop. So those tend to do better than actual produced music videos. But if the song is really good,
Wait. You're saying a video shot in a laundry room could do better than a produced video?
has been testing better in general for people that are doing this on a large scale. So
Wow.
And the reason is because those are the kind of videos people tend to share organically. So if you're going to do...
Yeah, check this out. I had a video on YouTube. I made a video for a friend of mine on a guitar amp years ago, and I didn't even know really what I was doing. I posted it on YouTube, ended up on the company's website. Somebody months later was like, hey, I saw a video of you playing a guitar on the floor of your studio. I was like, what? That video at that time had 100,000 hits.
Wow.
100,000 views. I had no clue.
Yeah.
I did not know. And I made it for a friend of mine, and it became like it's still on forums,
Just
man.
slap it on the YouTube so
Well,
you can find it easily.
The amp company reached out to me, did some really cool stuff for me, and I still have a very good relationship with them. But that was not my intention. My intention was like dude, I found an affordable tube ad. Listen to this. Right?
Well, there's a reason for that. And first of all, you don't want to exclude. These are not mutually exclusive. You want to be on both. Facebook is the number 2 search engine behind Google. I'm sorry, YouTube is the number 2 search engine behind Google. So for discovery purposes, you want to be on YouTube.
Both.
You definitely want to be on YouTube. But in terms of being able to advertise, Facebook has dropped its organic reach lower and lower, and bands are complaining. And I'm like, it was free. It's not yours. They've been letting you use this for years.
That's interesting you say that, because like for our podcast,
Yeah.
I am building our page, right? And I realize I'm just going to take my time. We're going to try to do it as organically as possible, but it's pretty cheap in my opinion. I think it's pretty cheap to do what we've been doing. I didn't think it was horribly expensive.
Well, and you haven't spent any money on Facebook ads, have you?
Very little. Okay. We're talking, I'm talking like I just did it to test it.
Well, the secret to Facebook ads, because they're horrible if you don't know what you're doing, the secret is sequential ads that are targeted. And just to show you the power of Facebook, if you talk to any top digital marketer, a lot of them are saying, that Facebook is who put Donald Trump in the White House, because he was running Facebook ads, and it wasn't Cambridge Analytica. It was he was able to target specific interest.
Yes,
and that's what Facebook does.
So you're talking when you go, like, just for the general public, if you have a business, when you go to get the ad, it tells you the demographic age, it tells you the geographical location, it tells you all that stuff.
It does. But if you want to grow your audience, which is the big thing that I always get, so we're doing good with what we have. And you talk about a band that has a new record. Well, if they don't have an audience, then this is where you start. If they do, you focus on your existing audience. That's warm. You work those guys first. But if you don't, and you want to grow your reach, then we use a very simple sequence. We take a video that showcases one of your best songs, and we run ads to that video on a large scale. You pick whoever you sound like, and you may pick 2 or 3 bands in detail targeting. You can set up your own audiences, and you want to get that somewhere between 200,000 or 300,000 to maybe 2 million, not too much larger. So if it's a large artist, I've got one client that sounds like Taylor Swift, and if you try to target that, you're going to get 9 million people. So she struggled.
Does that cost a bunch?
No, it's just you don't reach as many people, so it does drive your cost up. But you can reduce that ad size by saying they also need to be, say, into weight loss or on diet programs, because this artist has struggled with weight, and that can reduce the audience to where you're in that sweet spot. So you run what's called a video view campaign, where you're not trying to get anybody to do anything. You're not trying to get them to do anything but watch the video.
Okay.
And you do that first, and it's good to spend, $40, $50 on that if you're starting out, if you can do that. I've seen a lot of bands hit a couple 100,000. I've seen some hit over 1 million. There's a video going around now by a band that does a Metallica cover in like a jazz fusion format.
I've seen that video.
Yeah.
I've seen that video.
They are using this technique. They're in the same one of the same classes that I took. But you take that first video, you run ads, and that is basically going out and introducing yourself to new people to build your fan base. Your second ad, Facebook will let you pick who watched your first video. So your second ad only goes to the people that saw that video.
Yes, I've seen that.
That is a highly targeted audience. Then you can maybe think about asking for an email and get their email address. Because once you have
Jimmy's mind.
This is blowing my mind.
And that's how you do it as an independent, because if you build a relationship, you want to have a good video. You want to set up a landing page, which is just a one page. Either give me your email or don't. You've heard my music. You know what I sound like. Here's one more video, for you to watch. Once you get their email address, you can follow up with them forever. As I learned in the 90s, it's the lifetime value of a customer.
It's genius.
But what's genius about it is what sells music for independents is stories and experiences.
Correct.
So if you create, say, an album launch, and you start and you say, hey, my album's coming out, in a month, but I'm going to give you 3 songs for free early, and you have an autoresponder automatically send those 3 songs out, and you do a simple email that links out to a page with a song, and you give them options for high quality downloads or streaming. Let them do it however they want. And you tell the story behind the song. You maybe do a video of you talking about the meaning.
That is great.
They buy into the experience of taking the journey with you. And you talked about content, stuff like videoing while you're recording and showing that process.
Yeah.
Backstage, playing live, like you talked about, in one of your podcasts. Those things take people to an experience and a journey. And after 4 or 5 days, or maybe 2 weeks, after you kind of string them along and build that relationship, then you send them an offer to buy the hard copy CD. And a lot of people would buy it, not just to get the rest of the songs, but to be part of that experience, to be invested
excellent.
in you.
That's excellent.
I know people that are making over $100,000 without touring, just by selling CDs and merch. So you got to have product. If you can do
Still
Facebook
selling
ads,
CDs, man.
yeah,
That's excellent.
But you
That's
got to have product. If you can do Facebook ads, the only way you can recoup them is by selling product or by playing shows. And you can take the same exact thing. You run a video, and then your second ad, you target the people that watch that video, but you also narrow it down to Kansas City, wherever you're playing.
What's your thought with like digital content streaming? Like nowadays you've got CD Baby, you have Reverb Nation that's they want it all. Like they want you to host a website with them. Yeah. They want you to host. I've seen some people run into some issues.
Those are terrible. Number one, because let me just talk about Reverb Nation, because the pages
Reverb Nation's the one that I've seen the negative stuff.
Well, they have so many links. You don't want to send somebody to a bunch of links to where they click around and get lost. You want to send them to something to where they have two choices.
Yep.
Either give you their email address and buy into your experience, or they're gone, because you don't want the people that aren't going to buy from you anyway. So you are basically weeding out the people that don't like your music, and you're gathering your best fans. And there's a strategy, with a lot of different marketing, and it works with music. If you can get 1,000 hardcore fans, you can work full-time. I mean, you can live full-time on your music by selling it, through merch, or touring and using the same strategy and targeting specific cities to create new fans.
That's incredible.
It's amazing. But the thing is, there's so many people that don't want to do the work. They just want to sit around and be discovered. And
I think our smart devices have created that culture.
Yeah.
People would just rather rap or do their Instagram videos. Instagram famous.
Well, and so have stories from the past. Like somebody just happens to be at the right place, and then somebody else happens to be there too, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're awesome. Let's go." And we've heard those stories before. Everybody has those illusions of grandeur because of that kind of stuff. So
I think artists morph, like the ones that last a long time. They sort of they work hard at it, and they morph with the business, and they morph with the platform. They're really the ones that have the longevity, right? Matt Langston with 1187 doing the Jelly Rock stuff. I see it even with Disciple is still doing it, even though they're not getting what they used to get. I see their name popping back up again. Benton stays. Benton's got his fan base, and he knows what he's doing. Yeah. And it's it's sort of genius.
It is, and all of those guys had a window where they had some opportunity to create leverage, and they parlayed that, because Matt worked hard when they were signed.
Yes. A
lot of bands, when they get to that point,
they sit back and let other people do the work.
They want a team. They want this. And the thing is now, if a record label comes along and they hear a great song and they go and they see you've got 200 fans and nobody's commenting on your post, nobody's visiting your Instagram, you got no engagement.
There's no engagement.
There's no airplay. You're not playing shows. You're not making any kind of money. I've heard one manager say that, and this manager used to manage a large female country artist, that a lot of the record labels now are looking for $10,000 or $15,000 a year for an artist to already be making to show that they can build their own audience.
And from what I understand, I know on the country music side, there's no more give me money deals. You're investing into it with them.
It is like becoming business partners.
Yes, that's what it is.
They are looking for a model that's already created, that's already shown there's an audience out there.
So
because they can't guess.
So you're talking for anybody, really any band, or any artist, but you're talking about getting emails, filtering out the people that don't care, working on your video content for your social media. Facebook's going to be the best platform, in my opinion, for that. But don't ignore YouTube. Don't ignore YouTube. You got to have a presence there. But that Facebook, it seems, Facebook is going to be it's only going to get bigger.
Yeah.
It grew during the Cambridge Analytica scandal. It actually got larger. Now,
the company, it really...
More users. And let me go back to, because you mentioned Spotify. You definitely want to be on those platforms for discovery. Well, so using a company like TuneCore or CD Baby to get on those platforms is good, but you don't want to drive your personal fans to those streams. You want to try to get them to buy hard copies, or digital downloads.
And the way you're going to do that is going to be getting their email and really connecting with them,
building a relationship,
either playing live or through your social media.
If you let them in, if you peel back the curtain and they kind of see what's going on. And the thing is, if you're a new artist, if your goal is to get signed, or if your goal is to become a successful independent artist and pay your bills, the path's the same. If you're going to have to build your career first for either route you want to take.
Right.
So you might as well get out of your room. If it's Saturday night, go down to a club that does shows, pick a, say, 2-hour drive radius, draw a circle on a map, or if you can do it on your phone, do it, and go to places where there's shows every week and meet club owners, venue owners, meet bands, and network. Go to conferences, go to South by Southwest. Go to CMJ in New York. There are a lot of, Billboard has a conference. There are conferences and showcases all over the country. You can use Google, get out there and meet people, and then don't try to go and pass out CDs, or even download cards. Go and meet people and try to get their card, because if you can't follow up with somebody, that's not going to do much good.
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
So go and meet people and ask them for a card. Ask them if you can send them some music when the dust settles. But meet people. Get out of your room. If you're sitting around on a Saturday night and you're not doing anything for your music, odds are probably 99% that you're going to be flipping burgers or something in a few years. No offense to all you burger flippers.
But, it's important. That has to be said.
That's true.
I had to say it. Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool, man.
And
Tough love, man.
It takes work. And you know what? You really do have to kind of break it down like that. You just have to kind of tell them, look, I'm sorry, but you're not nothing. You're just zero. You're not going anywhere, because all you're doing is posting on your page and on groups and saying, check this out. That's terrible. Every time you do that and you don't get engagement, Facebook punishes you more.
Yes.
So you want to be careful to what you post on your Facebook page. And the reason that Facebook is so good is because it has the highest conversion rates of all the platforms. Instagram stories
you're talking
are
about
great
conversions
to get people to buy or to give you an email. Whatever you're trying to do,
That's interesting.
Facebook is terrible for selling, but it's great for building an audience and getting email addresses. The advertising platform is second to none. Once you figure out how to target, it takes about 2 or 3 pennies for each person to watch a part of your video. So you can turn around and target those people. Like I said, you can target people that watched 10 seconds of it. If you want to really have a broad net, you can target people that watch 95% of it. I usually land in the middle, about 50%. If somebody watched 50% of a band's video, they got through the first chorus, and they're warm enough to send another song to or to ask for their email address.
Man, that's great.
And you know what is for another discussion that is really a hot topic now that I've just dove into for me. I'm not trying to teach this to my clients, but that's messenger bots.
I've seen those.
It's more complicated, but the open rates are so much better than email.
I've noticed that.
That is a big
part of
direct.
Are these the ads in the Messenger app? Is that what you're talking about? Or
well, they can be ads like normal Facebook.
I've seen
ads,
those pop up,
and it says send message. And once it does, you have you have permission to send them automated sequences.
Yes,
and
if we wanted to, all of our followers on our Facebook page, if we want to remind everybody, hey, we got a new episode up this week, we can just do it that way.
Yeah, you can target people that like your page.
Yeah, it's direct. It's direct. It's pretty. I noticed that. I saw that recently, and I was wondering, that's.
But the cheapest way to get people to watch something is through a video. Video views are the cheapest. They're 2 or 3 cents a view. Whereas if you ask Facebook to get you, engagement, you're going to pay more for each engagement. One thing you never want to do is to run ads for likes, because you're going to get people with bots that are just going to be clicking. And you don't want a lot of likes. You want a targeted group of your tribe
of people.
Yeah.
So don't run ads for likes, and
just do
definitely don't buy
videos.
them.
Like, the videos are the way to go.
They are the way to start it, and then follow up with them automatically.
Man, that is great.
That
Man,
is fantastic.
That
advice.
is such a huge amount of information.
It is.
That is great.
It is.
That is great. I love that,
chewing
Chip.
on that for a while.
Well, we're not going to wrap this up because I want to talk some more. But for people to find you, though, on Facebook, where can they find you for the Facebook page you have?
They can stalk me through you.
Yes.
That's one way. My company is red39.com. I do not have my consulting program open yet.
But you have some plans.
I do have plans.
Yeah, you're working on a feature.
I actually videoed some of my, I don't call them classes, because I try to mirror a consultation as if we were sitting down talking about music. So it's kind of a sit-down conversational thing. I shot the first ones in Europe, France, and Amsterdam last year when I was out with the Stones, but I couldn't say I was with the Stones. But if you go to my blog, you'll see that I was out with
You
the
were
Stones.
with the Stones, yeah.
That's all very intentional.
But you're doing more than that, too, right? Like, I'll be helping you with some recording software videos and
Yes.
some techniques, and there's going to be more than just...
I want to have resources for bands so that they can build their career. And one of the most important things that I tell everybody is learn how to do your own demos. Learn the difference between a demo and a recorded song that you can pitch.
Oh,
you definitely want to spend money at some point. I tell people to take their iPhone. I said, if you don't have anything else, take your iPhone and video yourself live, and then look at your 10 songs, and then go to somebody. Don't pick the one that's about your girlfriend that nobody else likes, because you're sentimentally attached to the lyrics. Get some feedback from others.
Uh-oh.
Pick two or three, and then come see you.
Yes.
Yeah, I have... Okay, that's great you said that, because there's a band that I love. I want to have them on the podcast. They're called Artist Vice. They're from the Charlotte area, and they have a really cool story. They came from a different band, and they sent me their demos when they approached me about recording their EP, and I instantly heard the talent in the band. I only need to listen 30 seconds. Yeah. Like, I know if I listen 30 seconds, I'm down. Don't worry about that. Like, I can listen to it for 30 seconds and go, I can work with this. So when I contacted Alex from the band, I said, hey, how did you record this? He goes, on GarageBand. I was like, oh, cool. On an iPad mini.
Yeah.
He did
That's the next
demos,
step.
and I'm talking, he was so in depth, like all the parts. I'm talking pretty much everything that got on that EP that we recorded here. We referenced a lot of those parts.
Yeah.
Because he just did all the MIDI stuff, and that he's not the first person that I've seen use like an iPhone to do that, but he basically did the pre-production work for me. We tweaked a few things when we got here. We added a few parts, and we did some production elements, but man, that EP came out sick. Like it got received very well. But those guys, man, he used an iPad mini, and it was crazy.
How many songs did you send you?
Oh, I think like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
But I wanted to hear, really, to be honest, when I'm listening to bands, I gotta listen to, okay, let me listen to that vocal. Let me see production wise how I can work with that, and they just had, I instantly got it, and that's the most important thing to me. But again, I get 30 seconds into the song, I'm like, boom, I know it.
All right, let's touch on that.
Okay.
Let's do it.
You just said one of the most important things for artists to keep in mind when they send music. And this doesn't matter if you're sending to a drunk club owner or the head of A&R at Sony. You're going to get about 15, 20, maybe 30 seconds. So whatever that first song is, if there's a 40-second intro, guess what? They've already moved on to the next guy. And you can't really go back to them and say, hey, we listen to this. Well, nah, listen, you're not really what I'm looking for. You got to nail it in the first 15 to 20, 30 seconds. I mean, if you're lucky, they'll get to the chorus. Because these guys have stacks of music. I mean, if you look at the email addresses for, guys like you, I'm sure, A&R people, booking agents, managers, they're filled with submissions, and you click on a link and you're trying to clear your email box out. So you listen to 15 or 20 seconds and, you're not going to get all the great bands.
I have purposely, I will say this, 95% of my business is through, reference, from, somebody that knew Jimmy and then very rarely do I get new people. And when I get new people, I usually make them come here to meet me because I want to see them. I want to talk to them about the process. They just pick up my acoustic guitar. I'm like, go, and I never let them play through the song because I just want to hear, I want to hear them in the room. And it's not to audition them. It's just for me personally, I need to know I can connect with it on that level, and then I purposely talk about suggestions just to see
how they react.
To see, it'd be like, oh, I don't know about that. Or if the reaction is, I'm like, hey, that bridge needs to be cut in half. We need to get to this. We need to cut the chorus at the end. Yeah. I want to see what their reaction is.
Well, if I can ask for baby bands or people, not even baby bands, just bands that have been around and still just can't, they keep hitting the ceiling. Is it pertinent that those tracks that we turn into people for listening start at the very beginning of the track, or can you kind of compensate and cut forward?
Here's the thing: it depends on what you're pitching to, who you're pitching to, and what those goals are. You have a different set of criteria.
Yeah, because you're
going to get paid. You're going to get paid.
I'm getting paid, and I'm producing.
For somebody that's not going to get paid unless this song hits, they have a very different criteria. And I always tell people, if you can, get your producer to do an edit and get to the chorus quick. If your songs are long, that's cool. My son's been in 3 bands. They've all come to me for management. I've said, no, but I'll consult. And, they write rock operas. I'm serious. Like my son had a rock opera about one giant monster or something. I can't remember what it was.
That's awesome. They're doing that, though.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was like The Who in the old days, but the songs were like 10 minutes. And I'm like,
can't do that.
That's great, but you're not, this is not something that you can really send people.
I think a good example, like Jimmy, your music tells a story, right? Yeah. You're doing, he does very folky kind of music, and it's vibey, so your audience is going to be different. You're going to have a different audience.
Yeah. For sure. And lyrically, you can pull them in. It's not always the melodic hook. It can be the lyrics, but the main thing
and
is
the story behind the song.
And the story behind the song. And that's why when you're doing ads, it's a good thing to tell that story, either through email or through the landing pages or whatever. But you just have to keep in mind.
You see that with the bigger churches promoting their worship music. There's always a video of the story of why we wrote this song, or so like
you'll hear that story and then you'll see B-roll of the live stuff or something like that.
Yes, like I'm a huge video game fan, so I love listening to.
Really?
I love the stories of why certain things were created in games. Yeah. I just eat that up. I eat that up.
All the Easter eggs make it just fun.
Like there's a gun called the Colony that spits out grenades that are spiders in Destiny.
Which game?
In Destiny 2.
Oh, Destiny. Okay.
Right. But I heard a story recently where it wasn't it at the end of the creation of the gun, it ended up being robotic spiders, but originally it was bunny rabbits, like rabbits. And they said when they pitched the weapon, it was originally rabbits that would run and explode on you. But in the game's open world, when you go to the Earth zone, you see this little bunny rabbit running on the ground. They said that's the model of the bunny they used for the original part of the gun.
That was their little nod.
So every time I see it in the game, I'm like, man, that's the coolest thing ever. But you're right. People connect. Connect with the story.
And if they can connect with the lyrics, that's great. But again, like my question, maybe on a more technical kind of note, would it be frowned upon to be like faded in at the moment where that starts? Because if you have a great song, but your intro is 30 seconds long.
Yeah, I don't think so. Have to cut it. I don't think so. I think fading in is fine. It depends on whether you're sending audio to get somebody to listen or if you're trying to get somebody to watch through the Facebook news feed.
Right.
I rave about Facebook because I've taken so many classes on it and I've seen just how cheap it is compared to the traditional models. You know, you could take $2,000, pick a song, hire a independent radio promoter, and odds are it's going to flop. You take that $2,000 and you use that to build your audience, and then follow up with
and
them.
the value's much better on that.
Much better. Yeah, much better.
Wow. Okay, so let's point that out, because
Yeah.
I see bands promoting a lot of radio stuff. The value's always going to be better on Facebook.
Much better.
And I have said that recently. I don't understand the value when you only have a handful of Christian radio stations playing your rock single. What does that what does that do for you?
Right.
Other than you get to say, hey, we charted at 21.
It's a little bit of credibility, and there's nothing wrong with going after that, but spending a lot of money on it.
But I'm saying
you know.
the value.
The
I don't think the
value-
value's there.
Here's the thing. On any given night, there are more people logged into Facebook than CBS, Fox, ABC, and NBC.
Amen.
On any given night.
That doesn't surprise me.
That's
at
why
all.
you had a presidential candidate running ads on Facebook while his competitor was running TV spots and spending 5 times the amount. I mean, it's just
Whoa.
It is just
You're
a
right.
phenomenal platform.
You're right, because the budget was huge difference.
Oh yeah,
money.
and a lot of people wrote him off because of that. And I'm not.
Yeah, I know,
I'm not
I know.
really a supporter.
Well, I know.
I loved what he did with marketing.
But people, history is going to prove that was one of the worst campaigns run
by her, and best
by her
him.
team, and best by him.
Best campaign in history.
And it has nothing to do with beliefs. We don't talk about this on this podcast, but it's about the business of how they reach people.
It was just
and they did it. Well, Obama did it
smart
early on, but
he-
this was refined.
Right. He did it with what he had, and that was a big edge for him.
It was a big edge. It helped him, but
Absolutely.
this was a very refined version, and it's probably even going to be more refined for whatever the next election. I think it's going to be governed a little differently now.
It will be.
I think it's going to be controlled a little bit better, but man, I mean, that explains so much.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean,
But that same power that they used to
You can use.
You have access to that.
Yeah.
You may
Anybody
not
can
have
do
the
it.
millions of dollars, but you can still get it.
You need a great song or a really good song. You know, get a video of it. You know, if you can get an external microphone attached to your iPhone, even better. You know, a camcorder with an external microphone. The better audio is always good, but it doesn't have to be. Just get a great song. Do something really unusual. I saw one video that had millions of views, and I can't remember who the artist was, but it showed him sitting on a throne. And there's this thing called a stop moment where you need to get somebody in the first 10 seconds to go and zero in to stop it from going down your news feed. This video panned out, and at about 4 seconds of panning out, there was a lion sitting beside the throne.
Oh, and that's you're like, oh, I gotta watch that.
Yeah.
See, you're giving me an idea, because I'm going to do a little review on the Paul Reed Smith, John Mayer video, but I wanted to do some production with it, and I wanted to get some friends of mine to, like, I'm going to write a really simple track just to show the tones. This could be instrumental, but I was thinking about doing a video just for fun. You know, I don't, for my YouTube stuff, I have no intention of monetizing that. It's just purely my opinions and a platform for me to have fun. And people do reach out a lot ask me questions about stuff, but I was like, okay, what kind of video, how fun would it be to make it an instrumental guitar video interesting? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's going to have to be something crazy though.
Well, you know, again, with free reach on Facebook, it's not that great. But if it's really good and you ask people to share it, you know, that gets it out there to more people. When you start to spend money, even if it's $1 a day, and I know people that will recommend
on reach, right? Not on likes.
On video views.
On video views.
$1 a day for 7-10 days, spend $10 and pick the people that you feel like would most likely like that. And you're going to be, you know, if it's good, you're going to get a high probability of people that are into it. The thing about it is with Facebook, once you download that video, there is a formula to where you can save that post ID. And so if it gets watched by, you know, 50,000 people and gets shared 20 times, you can turn around and use that same video again. And those shares and views are still there. It's called social stacking. And that's what people are doing. This Metallica song.
They're social stacking.
They're social stacking. Now you don't see it as a paid ad. It's getting shared enough But when it gets shared, all you see are all these people sharing it, commenting, and the 1 million plus views.
And they're from separate forays.
Separate ads.
Y'all, this
Yeah.
is blowing.
Separate
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah, yeah.
This
These
is
are all
great.
tools available to us. We just didn't know what we were
Well,
doing
that's
with
typically how it works.
them. That is.
Yeah. There's not a lot of digital marketing in the music world. Labels don't seem to care. A lot of people that really are teaching this stuff, there are 4 or 5 people that I, are kind of like what I'm trying to do. But all of them are totally against labels. They've been shunned by the labels.
They're all pissed off at them.
They're all pissed off. This is how you do it as an independent. And
Yeah.
what my thing is, well, this will also work if you're trying to get
On
signed.
the professional side.
If you have a video and somebody comes from a record label and they see that you've gotten 100,000 views on your own,
They're going to pay attention.
that's much more important than likes. You're gonna have their attention, and at least you've got some credibility.
I love that. I love this. This is so good.
And it's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I decided that up until about 2 years ago, all these things that I figured out, I only use for my artist. I just would hoard them. So they'd try to be hopefully an advantage. And
But Chip,
now,
you've got a good personality for this kind of stuff, and I think, your Facebook page growth shows what you're doing. Number one, but I think people will gravitate to it because I see it, man. I see it in the recording world. There's a website where you can pay for tutorials. I would never pay for tutorials. I just had to figure that stuff out on my own, and I always felt like YouTube was the best resource. Hey, this is how you edit drums on Studio One, or this is how you tune. This is how you get the auto tune vocal from Post Malone.
It's my go-to thing too for anything that I can't figure out. How do I get this website to look like this, or how do I edit this video? I just went up.
So, what's your thought on websites? Like, because I think the simpler the better.
Yeah.
And it needs to drive to one particular source, in my opinion. But
everything needs to ultimately point to a email opt-in. You can have a website, but ultimately your YouTube channel, everything, all the traffic that you drive.
Let me do a free commercial for Jimmy. I pre-ordered his shirt.
Yeah.
And I gave him my email.
There you go.
Because it
happened.
popped up
I
on
got
his
it
website.
today.
If
I got
you'd
it
have bought
today.
his
He got my money?
download and your information.
Yeah, he's got my money. He's got my information. He's going to email me. I'm going to be like, boom.
Can I say
I
crap?
won't sell it.
Yes.
Okay, he's going to spam the crap out of you. That's what I would do just to kind of get back at him. There are
But
best
yeah,
practices.
I got what you're saying. I got what you're saying. But the website needs to be simple.
Yes, and I always recommend separate landing pages and separate funnel pages. Each song has its own page, so there are no distractions. You want people to just see what you want them to watch.
I like
and
that.
so you have to eliminate all of the links. Now you have a home page, but you want to, even on your homepage, link over to where they can
Like when
sign up.
Jimmy builds sites, and I think he does a great job.
What program do you use? What platform?
I'm using Squarespace.
Okay,
Yeah,
Squarespace.
and he built our Bomb House podcast
That's
page.
a nice site.
Yeah.
And he did great. Like
Yeah.
it was simple. Like I was like, man, I'm a little jealous because my studio site's great. The guys who did my studio site did a fantastic job. But I purposely sort of want a wall between people just trying to get a hold of me. With the podcast, I want it the opposite.
Sure.
I want people to engage with us because I love it. I really do, hearing even the bad feedback, which we haven't gotten. I'm sure it's coming.
It's coming tomorrow. Well,
But
after this is edited.
I'm ready. But listen, I love trolls, man.
Yeah.
Bring it on. Like
Me too.
Yeah, bring it on, man. Like I have zero.
That's the trolls are the spice of life.
Yeah, and who the trolls actually are is what's shocking. It's pretty interesting, but you have to have a thick skin, man. So when you step out onto that world, you got to be careful.
Kill them with kindness. That's what I see in a lot of classes. Because I'll pay for a class if it's good. If I think the guy knows more than me, I'll buy his class. And they teach this kill them with kindness. Oh, you didn't like it? Yeah, I do suck. And you just kind of And sometimes they'll come around and say
Deadpool humor works. Self-depreciating humor, which I love.
Right. If you get into a hating match, it's over, and you'll end up deleting it, and you'll lose that weight from your.
It's not worth
post.
it. It's not worth it.
So just be nice. Hope they move on. Sometimes they'll even turn around and say, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
So don't give them what they want. Don't feed the trolls.
Yes,
Man, that's great.
Do not feed the trolls.
Yeah, that's true, man. That is true. That is true. All right, guys, this is the end of episode 1. Actually, episode 2 will start off when we get into a question and answer period with Chip. Hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions, please hit us up on the Facebook page. Welcome to the Bomb House Podcast. God bless. Bye.
Laying down that adios and no smoking in my studio. Sound coming through the stereo. How you feeling shook? Vertigo. All of this confidence, dripping finesse, hitting notes and falsetto. We love tacos, so let Ricky do his thing pronto. Finish this session today, he gon' hit you with the mix tomorrow. Produce, record, mix, master it. Sounding so dope that it gets your past a lit. Hit after hit after hit after hit. Hit after hit, lickety split. What's that smell? Apple cinnamon, ready man big. Got it from Jimmy.